Let's jump right into this explainer and completely shatter what you think you know about deception. Because, look, most people honestly believe they can spot a liar from a mile away. But the data? It tells a completely different story. We're going to break down the actual real-world psychology of why and how we deceive each other, from face-to-face fibs all the way to modern deepfakes.
Now, here's a stat that'll blow your mind. Research shows that strangers lie an average of 3 times within the first 10 minutes of meeting each other. 3 times in 10 minutes. Seriously, keep that in mind the next time you're at a networking event. It shows that while society claims to be strictly anti-lying, we're actually covertly for it. We've woven it right into the very fabric of our daily and business lives. Which brings us to the core truth that most people completely miss. Lying is actually a cooperative act. Think about it. A lie has absolutely no power just by being spoken. Its power only emerges when someone else actually agrees to believe it. Whether it's a polite white lie to save social dignity, telling a friend you love their terrible new outfit, or it's a massive, dark corporate fraud, we are so often willing participants in our own deception. And man, the cost of being an unwilling participant is just staggering. To put this in perspective, corporate fraud alone costed jaw-dropping $997 billion in a single year in the United States. That is literally just an eyelash under $1 trillion. Deception is serious business, and agreeing to believe a lie can have massive, dramatic consequences.
All right, Section 1, the forehead cue test. Let's get interactive for a second.
Before we dive into the specific tells of a liar, let's interrupt the pattern here and test your own subconscious. So wherever you are right now, play along with me. Take your dominant hand and trace the capital letter Q on your forehead. Just go ahead and trace it out right now. Okay, got it? Now be totally honest with yourself about exactly how you just drew it, because the direction of the tail on that Q reveals a genuinely fascinating psychological trait. Okay, so if you drew it with the tail pointing to the left side of your forehead, meaning you drew it so that someone facing you could read it properly, you are highly aware of how people see you. And psychologically speaking, you are likely a pretty good liar. But if the tail faces your right, meaning only you can read it, you're likely an introvert and honestly a pretty terrible liar. Moving right along, Section 2, Linguistic Fingerprints of Deception. Let's see how our subconscious lets subtle signals slip right through our language. See, our conscious mind controls only about 5% of our cognitive function. The other 95%? It's busy operating totally beneath our awareness. And more importantly, it's constantly leaking what we call linguistic fingerprints, because constructing a fake story requires completely different brain machinery than just recalling a true memory. Using a technology known as linguistic text analysis, experts have nailed down 4 common patterns in the subconscious language of someone who is building a false reality. First, they distantiate, meaning they use way fewer self-references. Second, they are subconsciously more negative because, well, they feel guilty. They'll complain about their stupid phone or traffic just to distract you. Third, they keep the actual core event explanation suspiciously simple. And fourth, they pad that simple little lie with super long, convoluted sentence structures and completely irrelevant details. Let's look at a classic example of distancing language in action. In this famous political denial, notice the specific phrasing. The speaker uses third-person terms, saying "that woman," to subconsciously disassociate themselves from the falsehood. They completely avoid using any personal or intimate language. We see the exact same thing in this next example from another political scandal. Notice just how long-winded and detached the initial denial is compared to the eventual admission. At first, he refers to himself as the apparent father of the baby. It's incredibly distancing and convoluted, right? But compare that to the short, direct, first-person ownership of the truth later on, when he simply states, "I am Quinn's father, night and day."
All right, Section 3, breaking the cognitive load.
Look, lying takes immense work. Inventing situations completely out of thin air is just exhausting. Which brings us to the immense mental strain that deceivers experience. Psychologists call this cognitive load. An honest person navigates their memory effortlessly because, well, the events actually happened. But a liar, they're actively constructing a fake reality on the fly. Their brain is basically overheating, working in absolute overdrive to keep the timeline and the details straight. And this right here is exactly why professional interrogators use what's called the reverse test. If you suspect a lie, just ask the person to tell their story backwards. An honest person can navigate their memory in reverse with pretty much zero effort. But a liar? Their cognitive load is already maxed out. Pushing them to recount a fabricated timeline backwards literally breaks their brain, leaving them stuttering and completely unable to keep their false details straight. Under all this intense cognitive load, the physical body starts leaking red flags left and right. And forget that old myth that liars constantly fidget. That's just not true. Because their brain is so overloaded, they actually tend to freeze their upper body. They'll also overcompensate by making way too much eye contact to try and look sincere. They blink constantly to mask their disjointed emotions, and sometimes they even flash a totally inappropriate smile, a psychological glitch known in the trade as duping delight, simply because they're subconsciously thrilled they might be getting away with it.
Which leads us to Section 4, the interrogator's secret.
Let's explore the psychological tools that professional interrogators use to extract the truth when the stakes are incredibly high. The most powerful one? The punishment question. The phrasing here is absolutely vital. They ask, when we find out who did this, what do you think the consequence should be? Notice they say when, not if. How a person answers this question gives you an immediate psychological window into their guilt.
When you drop this question, listen very closely to the response. An honest person wants strict justice. They'll say, fire them or prosecute them to the fullest extent. A deceptive person, on the other hand, will subconsciously suggest leniency. They might even slip up and use first-person pronouns, saying something like, well, people make mistakes, I wouldn't want to go to jail over this. They say that because, in the back of their mind, they know they are the one who might be facing the music.
Another brilliant tool is the presumptive question. This one is so clever because it isn't a direct accusation. You aren't flat out saying, did you steal my laptop? Instead, you ask, is there any reason someone would say they saw you in my office? This completely shatters a liar's rehearsed narrative. It forces their overloaded brain to scramble and quickly spin up a new alibi, which very often leads them to make up an excuse that accidentally places them right at the scene of the crime. Gotcha!
And finally, Section 5, surviving a post-truth society. Okay, let's zoom out and look at how these deep-rooted human psychological flaws are being weaponized in our modern automated digital landscape. We are currently facing an absolute epidemic of synthetic media, and it is wild how perfectly human flaws map onto today's digital tools. Where a human liar uses rehearsed scripts, automated content farms use ChatGPT wrappers and Notebook LM to spin up endless synthetic narratives. Human vocal strain, that's been replaced by unlicensed AI voice clones. Masked facial expressions are now highly sophisticated deepfakes. Basically, we are mass-producing the exact same cognitive and linguistic illusions we've just been analyzing.
But there is good news. To combat this massive wave of digital deception, major platforms are fighting back with strict monetization policies. They're actively deploying machine learning classifiers to hunt down synthetic watermarks and spot those unnatural frame rates. Undisclosed, fully AI-generated content that lacks a genuine human angle gets flagged as inauthentic and gets instantly demonetized or suspended. Meanwhile, authentic, genuine human commentary is actively being rewarded by the algorithms.
In a world that is becoming increasingly cluttered with digital identity thieves, fake audio podcasts, and synthetic video, we really need to lean into this timeless principle. Character is who you are in the dark. True integrity, authentic human connection, and genuine, honest intent, these are things that simply cannot be perfectly simulated by an algorithm or a deepfake.
So here is the big takeaway from this explainer. By combining your new understanding of the psychological tells of human deception with a sharp awareness of modern synthetic media, you hold the power to choose and demand an honest world. So the question is, will you use the science of recognition to demand authenticity and intelligently navigate our post-truth world?